But thank you for joining us either way. I so got your book. I read it.
Oh,
I read it in 2 days.
stop.
Phenomenal. Yes, I was. Oh, come on, Kelly. Of course, for you, of course, Kelly. Of course, I was going to read this. So I bought the book the day it came out. Kelly sent me the link, and I bought it, and I read it in 2 days, and I was thoroughly impressed. The book is Elevation: The Divine Power of the Human Body, a study of the Book of Revelations. I definitely want to give Kelly some time to talk about it because I think it's one of the more heavily induced book of wisdom that I own now. I consider it one of my top collections because of just how Kelly has been able to break down the book of Revelations in the Bible and compare it to the microcosm of the human body, as well as a lot of the deeper messages that go along with like the Hebrew alphabet and things like that. So highly recommend that if you're watching this and you are seeking some more information on the in-depth esoteric knowledge of the Bible, you absolutely have to use Kelly as a source. She is a phenomenal, gifted, and extremely intelligent person who's been able to see through the cracks of a lot of the blind spots that I think many people have today when it comes to studying spirituality. So Kelly, I would love to hear more. I already know a lot of this stuff personally, and I know a lot of your story. I would love if you could share more of how you've just been so blessed with a lot of this wisdom and how you've been able to encapsulate it in such a wonderful piece, among the other books that you've also written. So I'll pass it back to you. I'd love to hear more about just your own journey in writing this book and more about the way that you have written it to help other people. I think that would be a really great start.
Okay, so the Elevation book started as a YouTube series. I was breaking the Book of Revelations down chapter by chapter. Um, so each video was specific to each chapter. And then just through general feedback and comments, quite a few people said to me this would be really nice as a book to have, like, as a reference, just on the shelf to always be able to refer to without having to like sift through hours of video. And I didn't really know when I started the series that it would be a book, but as soon as that feedback started coming in, I thought that just it makes total sense to do that, because all of the research and the process was already being undergone, and I just felt like this is probably the most interesting book of the Bible in terms of it's the book of the Bible that is kind of the most popular in terms of people are interested in it. They want to know what it means. Like, is the end of the world coming? What does it mean that Christ is coming back? Who are the 144,000? What's the 1,000 years of peace? And what happens after that 1,000 year period? Like, are we doomed after that time? And it was certainly a big part of my awakening to understand the codes within Revelation, because I think when you're really intensely indoctrinated by fear and only looking at literal meanings in the Bible, it can be really disempowering. In fact, it's tragic, that there are so many people suffering from just looking at eschatology and like end time prophecies, and a lot of the people, unfortunately, that think they know what they're talking about when it comes to end time prophecies, actually, I'm not saying that I'm an expert or that I have all of the answers or anything like that. I wouldn't dare be so egotistical as that. But when you seek, like, from your heart, and you spend hours in meditation and you read the word, and you cross-reference the scriptures that are in that one book with other scriptures in the earlier chapters of the Bible, and you look at what other experts in the field are saying about it, and you have your own revelations inward revelations. You know, you feel tingles in your body, you feel like the lights going on in your brain when you're raising the sacred secretion, and you're very able to see, like, of course this is happening inwardly, you know. And I think that there's a lot of people who kind of just peddle this fear mentality, whether it's to make a quick buck, you know, to just like, oh, I want to be an influencer, so I'm going to talk about end times. And, you know, they don't really do their research and their due diligence. And it's just sad that people buy into it so easily without doing their own research. So with, you know, that video series about the book of Revelation, and with this book, what I wanted to do is say, like, you know, this is one possible meaning, but it's actually more likely that this is where it came from when you look at the etymology of the words, when you look at the sources that the Bible was written from, where, and you know, whether that's like Hindu scrolls and like ancient Greek literature and like all of these different things that existed before the King James Bible version, it's actually really kind of obvious that, you know, the literal meanings are highly insignificant, you know, and they don't do anything for us as individuals. When you take like this this inward meaning that's described in the Book of Elevation in my book, and you apply it to your own life, you realize that actually you are the master of your own universe, you know, and everything that you think, everything that you say has a bearing on what projects and comes into fruition in your outside world. And when you think about like the fruit of the spirit is seen in the cross section of our DNA, and you think about the 144,000 being the genes that make up our DNA, and the fact that our DNA is the fabric of our being, and our DNA is spiritual in the sense of it's, without superior technology, it's invisible. So I always like to, just to make things simple, I always like to think of the spiritual realm being the invisible realm, and the matter or the material world as being the visible realm. So in my way of seeing things, I just think of our DNA as being part of our spiritual body. Our genetic makeup is very much the white horse of revelation, that our thoughts, you know, actually encode. So you have like the divine mind, which is God thinking out creation. And then you have us, who some would say we're extensions of that, that divine mind. We're all like, our own minds are like little seeds of that. Or, you know, you could say that each of us is individually the epicenter of their own reality. So to be disempowered and let other people tell you that, you know, there's something you have to concede to, or there's something that you know, ultimately is in charge of you, it's just not true. And all you're doing is handing away your power at every turn. And what I would like to see, you know, with this book, and there are many other great, you know, people who are sharing this truth. For example, like Bruce Lipton, I mean, he's heavily censored, but his science and what he talks about and what he teaches are the ultimate truth of our being and of our lives and the power that we have. And also Joe Dispenza is another one, great teacher, Santos Bonacci, of course. There's many people who are trying to make this a more common dialogue and make more and more people aware of their power. And when you think about what's going on in society today, and you think about how there's an attack on our DNA and our RNA, it's no coincidence. And the Bible does say that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but we wrestle against powers and principalities, which means what we're doing is we're wrestling against the invisible realm. So at all times, we need to be vigilant about what we're thinking about ourselves, what we're telling ourselves, what with our words we're saying, and we're manifesting by saying, oh, I'm ill, or oh, I'm scared of this, or oh, whatever it is for each individual is changing your levels of consciousness with every single second. So hopefully this book, Elevation, will go toward just the shift in the new paradigm of people like realizing their power and recognizing that if they use their gifts for goodness, then we can have like a really like beautiful thing happening here. It doesn't have to be the way that it is right now. It's just because the collective consciousness is it's reaching that tipping point now, which is why there's just flux of energy, like swarm of information. Is this true? Is that true? Blah, blah, blah. Because, the scale of kind of like good and bad, or like evil versus life, or, whichever polarity you want to label it as, is kind of just reached that point where it's like, the good is really coming through, and it's saying like, hold on, like, I don't know if I believe that, I don't believe if I have to just do what some so-called like medical expert is telling me, when actually, they're getting paid off by whoever, not pointing any fingers,
Preach
but
it, girl. Preach it.
it's
Preach
just
it.
all a bit too like, Hollywood for me. It's like, we've seen this in films. Come on, are we this naive? Like,
Yeah,
wake
really.
up.
And that's coming from an ex or a current or ex actress. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, wonderfully said. Wonderfully said. If I, and I actually I want to add on to a lot of what you just said, because when I get an opportunity to talk to you like this, it definitely resonates from the bottom of my spiritual core. And of course, you brought up DNA, which is a phenomenal segue into this, because DNA at the very essence is spiral in shape, and spiral and spirit are ultimately the same word. So the power that you hold inside yourself is Fibonacci sequence, whatever you want to call it. There's an innate There's an innate cosmic vibrational signature which is passed from the macrocosm all the way down to the microcosm, and within the plane that we see in our own existence, it's just on different levels. So wonderfully said, and absolutely right. There's a lot of misinformation. There are a lot of people who are out there practicing, and they're getting involved and they're spiritually awakening. But the issue that a lot of these people have, and I know Kelly's going to agree with me when I say this, is these people are who are out here. They're whether they're very popular social media influencers or they're not, they're taking a lot of what they're seeing because they're on the spiritual journey and they're trying to share it with people, but they are somewhat a little egotistical, as you said. We are not the types of people who are going to sit here and say we have all the answers, because the reality of it is all we've done is done work, and we have done a lot of work and a lot of research, and the truths that we have found resonate with us because they hit our very spiritual core, and that leads us down a path of finding more wisdom and information. And
Exactly. And sorry, just to interject there, when in meditation, we come into a humble place and say, I know very little. It's when we achieve our maximum amount of downloads. So it's like through that meek spirit, that humility of, fill me with truth,
right.
that we actually make ourselves more of a magnet for that truth. If you're already in this mindset where you're like, I know it all, then what space is there to learn?
The two best quotes I like for that is, everybody knows the Socrates quote, the only thing I know is that I know nothing, which I think is pretty good. But on the other hand of that, I really like from Paradise Lost. It's a quote from Lucifer, and it's, everything I know is all I need to know.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people are.
Oh,
In
you gave me
particular,
goosebumps.
like because you touched on, and I have this little bit of a frustration too, where it's like there's so much effort being put into interpreting the Bible literally that we're completely missing the real debate, which is what are the allegorical meanings? Because by this point, it amazes me that people, even so-called theologians and members of churches and stuff, will still go out there and say, no, no, these are literal stories. We're going to talk about the literal interpretations, and all the allegorical stuff is irrelevant or
Fake
untrue
or
or
whatever.
fake or by wackos. And it's just it's a little frustrating because you're not having the actual debate, or even not even debate, just discussion that you should be having.
Right. This is actually something that so I'm also, as you know, Kelly, we've been working on our own book. I've written 10 chapters this week, and part of the chapters that I've written were on basically the I guess I didn't use these words specifically in the book, but it's really the de-evolution of modern Christianity and how that really came to be, and what the early Christians really believed, and who they were, and who wrote the Bible, and where it was written, and who took the Bible and bastardized it. I guess you could really say that the true words and the meaning of Christ and the chrism and all of the jargon, really, they basically, in my opinion, they bastardized it. But
Yeah, Constantine, big time.
Constantine, big time. That's
None
actually a
none
big
of
chapter
the
that we wrote.
Apocrypha, no Gospel of
Right.
Mary, no
Right.
Gospel
The
of
Council
Judas.
of Nicaea played a huge role in the way that we still modernly understand. I mean, really, the Council of Nicaea with Constantine is what threw the world into the Christian Dark Ages, because it deterred people from questioning and thinking, and all of the Hermetic and Gnostic and wise people who really invested their time into the Bible and wrote the Bible went underground with the little documentation they had from, like, the burning of the Library of Alexandria and other pinnacle points that were attacked by a lot of the Roman legions. So and not to mention, I mean, this is a big thing too. It's like the people perpetuate the Catholic Church as the true word of Christ, and yet the Romans were the ones who killed Christ. So why do they get to decide I mean, really, logically, why does that make sense? Why does it make sense that the Romans really were the ones who kind of put him on the cross and shoved a spear in his heart or in his spleen or wherever it was, or his kidneys, and they are the ones who are dictating his word, and they have been for many years. And we know that it's not the most clean organization in terms of being Christian. That's actually, I love what you said about the meek, because in the Bible, the meek will inherit the earth. But the meek, the definition of meek is not to insinuate that it's weakness. It's to insinuate it's the humble people, is the people who have humility who will inherit the earth, is the people who are willing to sacrifice and help other people understand just their place in the world and in the universe, and in reference to God's grace. That is who will inherit the earth, not the people who are trying, like you said, to maintain control of a system that they created, or to make a quick buck. Those people, no matter what, they're Luciferian, and they will eventually go down as such. But on the topic of this, which is great, what I loved about your book is I needed a platform to be able to understand how the book of Revelations transcendentally incorporates the microcosm. I needed a blueprint or a guide to understand that, because one of the working theories, and of course this is a working theory, is the Bible in reference to not only the microcosm but as well as the macrocosm. So you have a lot of people who preach the book of Revelations is about destruction, where God is going to send some kind of legion of angels or warriors, or the people, the four horsemen, or anything. And there are people like my grandmother, who I love very dearly, for example, who genuinely believe that Jesus Christ is going to come down on a cloud and save everybody. Now, I can't say that that's not going to happen, because I really don't know, and I'm not an egotistical person who is really going to make any claims. But when it comes down to understanding the allegory and being able to piece together the many different parts and then accumulate them together, that is something I think that not only Kelly absolutely exceeds at, but that's something that I also respect and highly admire about Kelly, and that's something that I try to do in my own life. I try to find those little spots that resonate when it comes to the wisdom that is compared to something like the Book of Revelations to the microcosm. Now, before I actually, obviously bought this book and read it about, I want to say it was maybe about 2 years ago now, I picked up another book. I actually have it here. I don't know if I've told you about this. So I picked up one book, and it was called The Cosmic Serpent, and it's by Jeremy Narby. I think I was referenced or tipped to it by Jordan Peterson. He was talking about it in a lecture one day. He's a psychologist, and basically the Cosmic Serpent by Jeremy Narby it's a really good read. It's about ayahuasca, DMT, DNA, how DNA is structured, the genetic composition and everything else. And basically, by the end of the book, he says there's something really, really significant about the secret within DNA. I just really don't have all the answers yet. Well, we know what a big part of that secret is. It's like the way that the universe kind of adapts its energetic cycle, and how we're able to scientifically and mathematically, to some extent, pinpoint it and actually make estimated guesses. And this is actually how, through a lot of due diligence and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of research and anatomical understanding of the human body and the place of a human being within the universe, we have found the process of the sacred secretion, which is the microcosmic Book of Revelations. It is the microcosmic connection to the higher realms, to God, to the universal energy, et cetera, et cetera. So when I read that book, I thought it was cool. But what I didn't know was that there was another book that is also called The Cosmic Serpent, which was written in the 1980s. Now, this book, Cosmic Serpent right here, this book is actually so hard to get a hold of that the copy I have is from the 90s from a library, I think in Idaho or Ohio. It was $300 on Amazon. There was only one copy available. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because this guy does not talk about the sacred secretion at all. But what he does talk about very heavily are the Bible and the Book of Revelations and the Book of Genesis. And basically, now both of these guys who wrote this book, their names are Victor Klube and Bill Napier. They're both PhDs. So they're like, again, this was written in the 1980s. So this is like before the internet, really. And this is based off of a lot of their research. What they found working together in the 80s was they believed that there was a clear, connection between the macrocosm and the Book of Genesis and the Book of Revelation. So when I read your book, and I will make a bold statement where I will say it borderline proves, because again, we don't like to be egotistical here, but Kelly has done her goddamn due diligence, and she has really figured out that there is a pure connection that you can put in a scientific, metaphysical, it doesn't matter what lens you're looking at it. If you understand the way that the theories and the arguments that Kelly is bringing forward, there's really no way that you can believe that the Book of Revelations or even other parts of the Bible are fully literal. It actually makes more sense to really start pondering on the allegorical, even if you're only pondering on it. What I've realized with this Cosmic Serpent is that there is obviously a deep connection between the microcosm and the macrocosm. This is something that we know, but what this has done is it has actually put more, like how your book puts definitions on it, this book puts definitions on the macrocosm, and this is all going to go in our book. Not only your book is going to be used as a reference, but also this one, because what I found basically, and this is of course a working theory based off of this guy's work too, you already have made a wonderful stride in showcasing revelations to the body. What they do is they say, well, the Book of Revelations also seems like there's some kind of like macrocosmic element to it, where it connects the parts of it talks about Moses in Genesis and how his plague, he's calling down locusts that are breathing fire and toads, and a mountain falls into the ocean. But then also in the Book of Revelations, there are similar things like a mountain falling into the ocean. What they argue is that they think that a lot of what is in Genesis and Revelation could be comets and meteors, which of course it
is 100%, like it's the same story in every layer of creation, from the biggest to the smallest. Because if you just think about phosphorus for an example, just one elemental example, it is literally made in stars, coming forth from stars, but it is also the element in our DNA that codes our DNA. So It's funny because a friend of mine and I, who has a great Saturday class, by the way, on Instagram, called Level Up. His Instagram handle is mlap. And yeah, he does these Saturday classes, very informal, completely free, just people just come together and talk. So I recommend checking that out if anyone's interested. But he and I were talking about this whole microcosm, macrocosm, kind of debate, and how, we see it and how other people see it and explain it. And, we've often said to each other, like, well, which comes first? Are we a product of that, or is it a product of us? Like, and I honestly believe that it's not like we affect the outer or the outer affects us, but I think it's all happening simultaneously. If you take the sacred secretion as an example, and you think of the pineal as the sun and the secretions of the pituitary gland as the moon, it's like, and our earth and our body as the earth, you can literally see how we have the same path, the same orbits happening within us as what's happening in the macrocosmic heavens.
Yes.
And like the gospel of the stars, which Santos talks so much about, is, it's not really what I delve into, but obviously I find things about it when I'm looking, for other things, or I notice certain things when I'm reading things. But I don't know, do you think that the stars are dictating to us and that it's already written, or do you think, like, just as a general question, that actually, like, we are adapting the stars? Because Charles Fillmore says that you may be a certain zodiac, like for me, born in April, late April, I'm a Taurus. But Charles Fillmore says the when you're at your height of being a metaphysician, you become so in line with your inner spirit, with the truth of who you really are as a creator of every facet of your reality, that you actually transcend your star sign.
Right.
That there's actually no limit to your capability. So I just find it interesting when loads of, people who are so into metaphysics, so many influence nowadays, so many channels, talk about various different aspects of what, we're talking about here. And I find it very interesting, like how a lot of people say, well, we're in this era now where this, that, and that's happening. And I'm like, yeah, but can we actually overcome that when we get to, when we evolve or revolve, devolve back to our truth? Can we actually overcome that? I'm just interested in your take. Sorry, I know I flipped it on you.
No. Actually, I'm glad that you did. So all of what I'm about to say, of course, is my opinion, and it's my own working theories about exactly what you're asking, right? So I like your approach, the one that you had kind of put forward, which is that we are almost working in tandem alongside of the universe. As we progress, the universe progresses to some extent, and we live in accordance with it. It's less of we are a byproduct of it, or it is a byproduct of us. It is a ever constant vibration, which is continuing. And the reason I say that is because, and this is something that I wanted to bring up now. Again, this is a working theory of mine, but it's absolutely going to go in our book. There is on a macrocosmic level, and again, the reason I bring this book up is because this book points it out. This is the book that pointed it out to me from the macrocosm. Whereas you have, again, boldly stating here, pretty much proven the microcosm. What they've done is they've discussed different aspects of macrocosmic events which go in line with different cultures. For example, almost every single meteor event which is in mythos, for example, Apollo versus Python or Marduk versus Tiamat. These are different cultures that have different stories of gods fighting in the sky, creating basically the exact same replication of what's in Genesis and Revelations when it describes certain elements that seem like destructive. But Apollo versus Python, for example, or Marduk versus Tiamat, and they give like three more examples, like Apophis, the comet Apophis. All of these are serpents. That's why the book is titled Cosmic Serpents. So it is the comets Python and all of these different elements. They are described basically as fire breathing dragons, which go throughout the sky. They get defeated by the sun god, Marduk or Apollo, whatever. They get defeated by these figures, and then the dragon serpent crashes down into Earth, causing a massive destructive scene. So that's just one element to it. But what really got me going on this, not just the comets themselves, is that they talk about Comet Enki and the Torrid meteor storm. And this is really where, as soon as I read this, I was like, there's no way that this book is $300 and has this specific information in it if it's not relative to the sacred secretion process. Let me explain why. There is a comet called Comet Enki. Enki, of course, is I believe Mesopotamian. Mesopotamian, is that?
Yeah, it's spelled differently. I don't know if it has, because it's named after the
Egyptian.
guy.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know if it has any relations to the Enki figure from I think he's Sumerian. I can't remember.
Sumerian or Babylonian.
That's terrible.
But, yeah, well, it's fine. A very long time ago, obviously we know the figure of Enki, which has been Enki. If you go back and you study the story of Enki, it's very similar to that of Thoth, Hermes Trismegistus, Christ, and some people even say Lucifer. Some people have working theories where Enki was more of a Luciferian kind of person. But at the same time, the comet itself, which is Comet Enki, it travels between the Earth and Jupiter. Jupiter, of course, being solar plexual in nature, every 3 years, similar to the 3-day cycle of the sacred secretion. And what it does is it traps a meteor storm every year, which goes from Taurus to Scorpio and back. So every year there's a dual meteor storm in the months of November, sometimes late October, early November, and I think it's late April, early May, sometime around where you were born. And these torrid meteor storms go from Taurus to Scorpio and back and back and back, and it's controlled by one comet, which is at the epicenter, goes around Jupiter, which is the solar plexual. So yes, to answer your question, again, working theory, yes, the macrocosm and the microcosm are one, and the macrocosm has a sacred secretion process. That does not mean we fully understand it. It doesn't mean that we have all the numbers and we have all the data, but that in and of itself makes no sense if you're looking at it literally, but allegorically. Allegorically, you are talking about an energy system that we may not have all the answers to, but it's transcendental as well as in our bodies.
And to help you like further with your book, because that's really like so cool, so interesting what you've just said. Yeah, just I love it how the puzzle pieces just like are coming in, and it's like just this huge picture with all these layers. There's also this book, it's got a strange title, by Toby L. Murray, The Cause of Menopause and Mercury is Not a Planet. It also has this guy, Toby Murray. I'd never heard of him before. It's quite a modern book from what I can tell. I can't remember exactly when it was published, but he's made some excellent parallels between the body and the planetary system. And when you consider Mercury being a moon instead of a planet, it just gets really interesting.
That would make actually a lot of sense.
What do you suggest Mercury was a moon for?
The sun?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly because I was actually using it more as a reference for the internal things to do with menopause and how like eggs expire and how that coincides with the sacred secretion for women.
Yes.
Or like a video I'm maybe trying to put together, but It's on hold at the moment for other reasons. It's quite a short book though, and it's very like simply written, very digestible. So definitely
I'll have to pick it up.
check it out.
Yeah. The other one I was gonna, if you're making a video on menopause, I'm curious if you know. I think we may have talked about this before. Do you know about Eugene Jonasz, the Czechoslovakian doctor? So shortly, it's actually a very interesting story. I think he's still alive today. In the 70s, he was a PhD scientist who proved with case study data that women ovulate and menstruate based off of the cycle of the moon, based off of the day they were born, but even further was able to prove that it's based off of the day of conception. The day of your conception as a human proves with an 85% level of accuracy. And the only reason he argues 85% and not 100% is because the 15% are women that sync up through toroidal fields to and I'm sure as a woman you probably have experienced that, because every woman I've ever asked has said, yeah, I've had at least one period which has been one menstruation cycle, I should say, that has been irregular because I think I synced up with another woman or somebody else or whatever. So he leaves that a 15% gap for a control group, but the 85%, he says, the day you were born, depending on what sign the moon was in, if it was male or female, will determine your gender. With an 85% margin, especially if you were born towards if the moon is in the middle of or towards the beginning of the trajectory of as it's going into a new sign, especially in that regard. However, he also says that what the phase of the moon that you were born on, especially, so if you were born on a full moon, that's when you will ovulate every time with no external stimuli. And shortly after his case study was published, he was on schedule to win a Nobel Peace Prize, actually, or something along those lines. He was going to win some kind of academic major award. They retracted his reward, and then they created birth control about 2 or 3 years after that. So if you look up, it's Eugene Jonasz. He's a scientist, and not only that, but he was a Sun and Moon Scorpio. Which naturally genitals, right? So he had a fixation on it. His name is Eugenejonas, and there's very little that you can find on him, but you can actually read some of his original case study work, and if you study it, it's quite impressive. It's shocking, actually, the parallels that he has kind of made in that regard. So it's very interesting. But yeah, that was just one thing that I wanted to kind of add to that conversation. Yeah, I'll have to look into that book though that you recommended.
Yeah, it's definitely a big one when we're like talking about those layers, like from microcosm to macrocosm, and how the Bible actually encapsulates all of that. Just makes it even more like it's an incredible book. Yeah, it's definitely good for looking at the outward, like bigger picture.
When I want, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I wanted to expand upon the question that you asked and add one additional thing.
Cool.
I think that if we really are living in tandem with the universe, which I do believe, because I believe that we influence the universe to some extent, I think that there may be a point where the consciousness is raised so high, whether we go from 5D to 7D to 9D or whatever as we progress, right, as we elevate ourselves, there is a possibility, again, huge working theory. Adam Kadmon, the man of the sky, connected from Aries to Pisces, is a cycle. It's a cyclical cycle. It's a circle. Yeah. Just as we, as I believe Kerr shows in the back of his Salts of Salvation, we start as an egg, which eventually becomes a formed circle, which we are connected from the head to the feet, and then we separate.
Yeah.
If the structural universe were to separate before our very eyes, I think that it would become the birth of something even greater. I think that there's a possibility that the universe is in an infantile stage similar to that formulation of us within the womb. And I think that space is the womb to some extent.
I think you're exactly right that the universe is an egg. There's the wonderful short on it. I can't remember if I think it's a novel, and they did a video on it, but it's just called The Egg. And it's a very interesting idea of meeting with God, where we are all God, always being sent back into various times and places so that we can understand ourselves, so God can understand himself. And it's a very interesting way of looking at it, because in that conception, just like you're saying, the universe is an egg, which means that we're going through a developmental stage, and that means that sometime it's going to be born into hopefully something wonderful.
Right, something that could be even greater. And in reality, we could, on this planet, we could be an organ, and we are all cells communicating, working for the effectiveness of the growth of this God, however you want to call it, right? But again,
100%.
big theory. Yeah.
But it's true. Like, well, I say it's true. Like, but in my
it feels like
opinion,
it is. Yeah.
I think it's true, because if you think about, like, how a cell starts, it's essentially an egg, and then it divides, and then you have two circles, and then it carries on dividing until eventually you have like this collection of cells, which is identical to the flower of life symbol, the seed of life symbol, which then becomes the fruit of life symbol, which again is the cross section of DNA. So it's just that one egg, that one point. I guess it's where the old question of which came first, like the chicken or the egg. To me, that says to me what came first, the thought or the manifestation. And if we think of like creation as God thinking out creation, and we're all a part of that at all times, then it is divine mind comes first. And I think, like, when we think about the basic periodic table, which is actually an evolution of the alchemical periodic table. On the alchemical periodic table, you have essence as number 1 and quintessence as number 2. On the periodic table, like the one we use in today's society, you have number 1 as hydrogen, of course, because it's the many waveforms of hydrogen are the voice of many waters, described in the book of Revelation. His voice was like the sound of many waters. Hydrogen is linked to water all the time. It's the basic elemental structure of water. So the sound of many waters is the many forms, the many waveforms made by the different vibrations of hydrogen. And then on the number 2 on the periodic table, which is quintessence, on the alchemical table, is helium. Now, it's really funny, because when I was looking more deeply into helium, I was using the metaphysical dictionary at one point, Charles Fillmore, who, again, I always like to talk about him.
Awesome.
There was something missing from the version of the book that I had. And I only realized it, even though it was a published hard copy book, because the paragraph didn't directly, the wording wasn't right. And I was like, it's like as though something has been removed from here.
On purpose.
Then I tried to find older versions, older publications of it. And thankfully, due to archive.com, which I also love, I found a really old manuscript of it. And I found the missing page. And it was saying that truth is helium. Because like helium, truth always rises. It always seeks to build up. So then it was like, okay, so alchemically, we've got essence and quintessence, hydrogen and helium. So then I was thinking about the scripture, I am the way, the truth, and the light, or the light, right? So I was like, okay, so the way is hydrogen. I am the way, I am hydrogen. If truth, according to Charles Fillmore, is helium, then we have I am the hydrogen, I am the helium, and I am manifest life. Because without those 2 first elements, essence and quintessence, alchemically, or hydrogen and helium in a modern context, there is nothing else. Without those 2 basic elements, we don't have anything that we see, hear, touch, or feel, because it all stems from those elements. So when we think about the microcosm and the macrocosm, the elements in the periodic table make up every single level of that picture. Without those elements, you can't have the microcosm, you can't have the human body, and you also can't have meteors, you can't have stars, and the sun is a star. You can't have moons, you can't have air, we can't breathe. Like, it's funny because we look at the periodic table, and for me, and like when I was at school doing science, it wasn't my favorite subject. My teacher, bless her, wasn't particularly like inspiring. There wasn't much enthusiasm there to
Many
make us
teachers are not
feel
these days.
inspired.
Yeah.
And I just always used to kind of sit there thinking, what's this got to do with life? Like,
Yeah, so what?
Yeah.
and I would love to find a way to make this really interesting to children, to make them really enthusiastic about the elements that make up every single layer of our, perceived reality, material and invisible and visible realms. Because when you think about the elements, they are pretty much invisible until you start messing around with them and doing different, reacting them against each other so you can see them spark or whatever. Then they kind of become visible, but they're part of both realms, visible and invisible. Yeah. Sorry, you were gonna say.
I was gonna say, I think one of the interesting things, at least for one fact, that might be interesting for younger audiences, for carbon has that thing where I think it's got 6 protons.
Yeah, she talks about that.
Yeah,
yep.
Which is so cool. And then the fact that carbon is highly related to Saturn, which of course is associated with the number 6 as well, and that carbon is one of the basic building blocks for carbon-based life forms, obviously. And then it's so associated with Earth, which I just think is super interesting. Is then that is a macrocosmic representation of a base, an Earth, whatever you want to call it, that I can think of.
Yeah. And not only that, but I don't know if you know this, Kelly. When I was in college for the modern education system, when I went to school, I was actually a chemistry major for like basically the first 2 years.
Wow.
I really enjoyed chemistry. There was something that really struck a chord with me with it, but I was not there's no easy way to say this. The college I went to, which is a pretty nice college, in fact, they sucked at teaching chemistry. It was so boring, and they did not do anything as far as progressing the evolution of it. They were just teaching these basic formulas. They weren't really even talking about the elements. They were just like, we're going to show you how you can do basic crap. And I took a few years of it, and I realized like, this is just not for me. I feel like there's something deeper here, but they're not teaching it, because why would there be a whole substrata of elements that have a code that you can read, and yet we're sitting here talking about very useless things like, if you combine these two things, they'll turn blue. It's like I'm paying hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars for an education so I can mix juice together. Like, it's stupid. I'm not doing it. So I ended up switching over to technology, which is actually what I still do now. But the reason that I liked technology was because it was very similar to chemistry. It's a component of different parts. So now, moving beyond the technology, now I'm going, as I've progressed and evolved over time, now I'm looking at everything as a puzzle piece, the same way that I did back then, but it's just with a lot deeper meaning. And I think that people get to a point in life where they decide, and I'm guaranteeing that this is the way that it works, because I know so many people. I've worked with a lot of people who are older, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s even, and I can tell you, people get to a point where they make a bold, rational decision, and they either choose to look deeper into the things that they enjoy and that they want to study, or they just accept that they don't know anything and they don't need to know as much, and then they live in their comforted lives, and they end up doing very silly things like listening to whatever the magic big black TV box tells them to do.
The experts.
The experts, yeah, all these experts. Just really what it is it's a system that has trained people to remove responsibility for their own actions and their own choices, and allows them to have those choices being made by somebody else. They are throwing the responsibility onto somebody else because they're lazy and they don't want to do it. I'm making a bold, mean statement, but that I really feel is the truth.
I think you're right in large part, and that's why I always say that I was a history major. That was my thing, and the most valuable skill that I think I learned had nothing to do with history. It was learning how to research stuff. which I think like everybody who goes to college, there should be a whole semester class on just how to actually research stuff, not just a day in the library, because that's why so many people now, they mock doing your own research because they don't actually know what it entails. They mock any opinion that doesn't come from an expert. And the thing that's frustrating to me is that they pick and choose what constitutes a person being an expert. Is it credentials or is it what they're
Yeah.
saying? Because they switch on a dime and they go, if you're not saying the right things, then your credentials mean nothing. You're not an expert. But if you are saying the right things, then it has nothing to do with the things being right to what you're saying. It's
Or your
because,
credentials.
of course, you're smart because you have the credentials.
Yeah.
So they just switch it back and forth as necessary to fit whatever narrow agenda or conversation they want to have.
Man, those research courses would have been so helpful if they'd been implemented a decade ago. Can you imagine what the world would look like if people actually knew how to research and learn things rather than, whatever the hell they're doing right now? I mean, it's we're in a bad state because people going back to the very beginning of this conversation, people are becoming somewhat egotistical because they're having a taste of spiritual divine intervention, I guess you could call it. They're having an awakening, and so now people are like, oh my God, I've been reading stuff for like a year. I'm a genius now. It's like people like Kelly and us, we've been researching this stuff for 10 years plus, and we're never going to tell you, no, we know everything. We're geniuses. We're the smartest people on the face of the planet. We know it. Just, buy our book because we're geniuses. No, it is to provide more guidance along that spiritual journey. And the problem that we have, and I see it especially on TikTok. TikTok's the worst. I mean, TikTok is the absolute worst when it comes to this stuff. I actually get so agitated a little bit with it that I make videos, responding to other people's videos. I see people who are getting millions of views on videos where they're like, look, the Bible says that an angel really is a big flaming wheel with eyes, and it's got 4 faces of animals and a dude's face, and like that's what it really looks like. That's like literally, and like that's what it really is. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying that if you look at it with more information, you can come to a better conclusion. And what people want to do is they want to say, well, this is the status quo, and here's a variation of the status quo, regardless of whether it's been well-researched, right or wrong. Here's a variation of it. Well, I like this one more, so I'm going to peddle this as the truth. But really, this is only a step, and there's a whole staircase of events and a whole staircase of wisdom that you have to apply to get a much broader sense. And actually, when you do so, you start to realize, oh my God, I've gotten through 10 different levels, 10 different steps of understanding this. And I still feel like I know nothing,
And it's also like, I think, trusting that, once you humble yourself to say, okay, I don't know everything, please, God or divine substance or cosmic principle or, creative essence, whatever, each person prefers to call it, then it's trusting that the answers will come as and when they're supposed to. Because I know that there are some books that I tried to read 4 or 5 years ago that I would open up and be like, I'd read the same paragraph 2 or 3 times and be like, what? Yeah. Whereas I can pick them up now and go, oh yeah, duh. But it's because it's very much like playing a computer game. Like I'm always saying to my 5-year-old boy, when he gets frustrated that he can't do like level 12, I'm like, well, you haven't done level 1 yet. You need to know, like, it's set out that way for a reason. Like you're building the skills and your brain is working in a certain way to build new pathways and to open new storage centers. It's like, if you've only brought the basic package of iCloud, then you can only store like a certain amount of data. But as that gets filled up, then you'll get offered, like, would you like a bigger package? Like our brains are very similar to that. So we can't expect, like, I get comments from people like asking me a certain question, so I'll do my best to answer it, but then they'll immediately jump back at me and say, well, that's not right. And it's like, well, it is right from my perspective, which you've asked for, but maybe you can't see it yet because you haven't followed the breadcrumbs to take you on your personal journey to understand in the way that you need to be shown so that you will get it.
That's right. Building up your levels also builds context, because one of the things that we have difficulty with sometimes is there's so much context around this stuff that you can't realistically go through and have a disclaimer for all of it when you talk to people. And then I think that's a huge part of why people stop and challenge you, sometimes really aggressively and even meanly, on some basic things that, like you said, are from your perspective. And I think that that's because they want to have the right answer. They've been brought up a certain way, but mainly I think a huge part of it is that there's no context. So if somebody were to read Elevation and they were from a very traditional Catholic household, and they didn't have any context for the occult tradition of Christianity, the Gnostics, the Hermeticists, how the Bible was written, what sort of thought process went into it, and how rich an allegory it is, and they listen to one of your videos or they try to read this, they're immediately going to think that not only that they don't buy it, or that they'll think it's wrong, it's a lie, because they just don't understand any of the context, because they never have. It's like the most common criticism I get.
It's too jarring. Yeah, it's definitely like it's too jarring for some people to take on.
Because so many people have been brought up, and I've talked about it with Matt, is Christianity in particular, or maybe it'd be better to say Catholicism, is so many people, I don't know how it goes worldwide, but especially in America, they have this, especially kids our age and younger, they have this knee-jerk reaction where they have to mock and belittle Christianity, and they don't even do it accurately, because they just say things like, oh, the Bible's just a bunch of fairy tales.
Yeah.
It's like, do you know what went into writing it? Do you know how educated the people were to have the ability to compile this? Do you know about who was there present? And they don't. And then when you try to bring that information up, they're not interested, and they think that that's more evidence of you being a crackpot somehow, even though you're referencing things that they don't know, and they openly admit, oh, I don't know that, but it's wrong.
Yeah, and what's even worse than that, on like, again, platforms like YouTube and TikTok, even worse than the Christianity attackings, because they don't understand them, is like the zodiac. Like, people are so willing to jump to the gun and say, just because you're born in this month, blah blah. It's like, okay, people are missing the point. You have not even 1% of the information. You're going off of horoscope bullshit. That is your evidence as to why the zodiac sucks and why it doesn't work. Well, maybe it's because it's a lot deeper, and it's more about physics and light and energy, and it's not about animals in the sky. Like, people are taking these things so literally. I mean, and to go off of both of your points, it's called Stairway to Heaven. It's not escalator or elevator or airport tram that you stand on and go across. It's stairway. You got to climb each step, and people want to just stand there with their luggage at the airport and ride the little thing, and they stare at the steps. And this escalator sucks. I'm still here. Yeah, they just stand there. That's all they do. It's bad. So yeah, very well said. It's we've gotten to a point now where I know that we can confidently say we're writing this book with the fullest passion of our hearts, and we just had a conversation about it this morning. We are not in any format. I think the longest part of this damn book is the introduction, because we have so heavily put, we are not saying we're geniuses and that we know everything. We are going to just put a bunch of puzzle pieces together and formulate your own opinions and do your own research. That, like, again, the introduction's like 10 pages, and we're like, oh my God, nobody's going to get past the damn intro, because they're going to be so bored with it by the time they get to it.
Sounds like, I mean, your premise sounds, like pretty vast. Like, even for me with Elevation, the Bible book of Revelation actually only has 22 chapters.
Yeah.
And in the oldest Bible that I've got, which is huge, it actually, the whole book only covers like maybe 9 or 10 full pages. So it's like, my like Elevations ended up being over 400 pages long.
Right.
I kept trying to condense it.
So
it's just really interesting how, like, you're kind of trying to cover the universe,
Yeah, it's been a lot of work. So right now, the way we have it planned out, there are 72 chapters, and so far we're at 65,000 words and over 100 pages, but it's in like font size 11. So I'm actually really struggling with figuring out how large this book is really going to be and the types of different formats or whatever that we might want to apply to get it within range of not being a massive overtaking work. And yeah, it's actually been phenomenal to write this, especially with Rich, because Rich and I have really been doing most of the writing, and then Tyler and Dan in our group have been reading and editing. So we have like a 4 page or a 4 person kind of a attack on this book, and I think that we might be able to finish it by the end of this year. I just don't know. This is a very random side off question. Do you know what font size you used for your book?
I was just gonna say,
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that,
I'm
because
gonna look at the word count on the Word version. Have you written it in Word?
yeah.
Yeah, you got a Dropbox file that we periodically add to.
Right, and we save the local copy just in case anything happens to it too. But yeah, so right now I think we're at 65 or 66,000 words, and last week we were at 50,000 words. So I've been Rich and I collectively, I think we wrote 13 chapters this week, and my goal is to incrementally increase that as time moves on. There's a lot. There is a lot, and we have a lot. We have over 300 bibliography sources, and I've been racking my brain as far as writing as much as I can in the short period of time that we have, because for whatever reason, I feel like this book needs to get out as soon as possible. I don't know what it is, but it's some kind of
I'm
calling.
really looking forward to seeing it.
Well, I'm gonna send you a copy.
I
I'll
can't
give you the whole transcript, because I would absolutely love some feedback on it. And also, I don't know if you're interested or not either, but we do need somebody to write the forward, and you were the first person that came into all of our heads.
Yeah,
So if you'd
I'd
like to
love
write the forward, I'd be honored in that as well.
At least for Matt and myself, you quite literally, your book was the one that started us on this whole journey.
That's true.
Like no
You
exaggeration, no
right.
no butt kissing.
Right. Yeah, no butt kissing, but seriously, you
no, I love
inspired
you
us.
guys.
Oh, we love you too. We love you too. Seriously, it's been such an honor to be able to connect with you, and just the amount of time you've been able to give to me, just in having our talks has been very valuable. So I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much for all that. I can say, I'm hoping that we can finish this book by Christmas. I think that if we really buckle down, we can finish it in maybe 2 months. But it is, yeah, so far I think we've completed like 40 chapters, so we're over the halfway mark. We're basically gunning for like a new Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. That's basically where we're
Okay,
at, but it's a lot less complicated.
being a chunky,
Yeah, a chunky boy.
chunky boy with a lot of imagery and a lot of explanations and theories. And again, the disclaimer in the information, the introduction part is like you got to scroll down 10 pages just to be able to get to the first chapter. So we were going to sell it, I think, as one collective whole, but then we're also going to separate it into the three volumes. The first volume is and of course we're going to price it appropriately, but there's probably just some things that more people are going to be interested in than others, rather than buying the whole book. So we're kind of,
Well, it's also a nice opportunity to double dip too.
well, it is being honest, but it's also more like the we've separated the book. So the first part, it's a trinity. So we're like, the first part is the Father, the second part is the Son, and the third part is the Holy Spirit. So the Father is the yeah. So the Father is the tradition. So that's the past, leading all the way up to basically the birth of Christ. The Son talks about the birth of Christ in the last 2,000 years and the influence of Christianity, as well as the historics of what's happened in the last 2,000 years. And then the Holy Spirit is the modern era, and how to properly manifest yourself and survive in a modern world full of misinformation, a system of lies, and basically poisonous ideologies and negativity. So, and then the last volume, of course, incorporates the sacred secretion into that. So it's basically 3 books in one, and that's why, by the end of it, I think we're probably going to end with a 500+ page book. It's
I was
tough.
gonna say, like, your courage is very admirable.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I mean, somebody needs to do what you're doing. And it's
I,
no, it's a big task.
I think about mainly
There were a lot of times in the process of writing Elevation that I felt overwhelmed, and like, how do I, share this? Like, I get it in my head, but translating it onto the page is no easy feat.
Right.
And trying to juggle that in against your other responsibilities and the jobs that you have and everything, like it's massive. Like, and this is what we need in this era that we're in, is like bright sparks like yourselves just owning it and saying, why not me? Like, I might not be like an expert by some people's opinions, but the Bible says like very clearly that God does not use the qualified, he qualifies the chosen. So if you feel chosen to do something, then be sure that you will be qualified to do that by the Holy Spirit, and you do not need any other teacher.
Nope.
Hell no. I don't need
advice.
any like manifest person telling me like, oh, I am or aren't qualified, when like the living spirit that animates my being, qualifies me, like by giving me the information that I need and the spiritual gifts that I need to put it on paper and share it with my brothers and sisters in light and love. Like,
I feel the exact same way.
Go away, academics.
Yeah. Especially when
not that I don't totally respect what they do and I'm not thankful for their expertise and what they've shared, but sharing is caring. So the more we share, the better life will be.
Yes, 100% for sure. I could not agree with you more. And not only that, but we are only able to shine as bright sparks because we have wonderful mentors such as yourself, and who also shine extremely bright in a time of very big darkness. So
yes, you are the candle in the Buddha saying, a candle's life is never shortened by sharing its flame.
That's
Amen.
beautiful. Yeah. Amen. Love it. Yep. Love it. Love it. I think that we can actually probably wrap it up here because we're already an hour and 15 in. But thank you so much, Kelly. Is there anything that you'd like to add? Because as you already know, we're going to plug all your stuff. We're going to put your links down below in the comments section and in the description. So for everybody watching, please go check out Kelly Marie Kerr, Elevation, and also go check out the God Design. And I know that you wrote another book, but I don't think I have that, and I didn't even realize that you wrote it until I saw it on Amazon the other day.
It's Christ Within, but it's actually only a what's the word, it's literally like the text that's in the video, the original Sacred Secretion video that I did, because like people just said they would love to have it in writing, so I just literally put the script for that into book format. So I do get bad reviews on it because it's like there's no details in here, and it's like, well, it does say in the description that it's only
a manuscript, really.
Yeah.
Well, hey, either way, you still have two wonderful books, three wonderful books, really. Elevation and The God Design. Go check those out by Kelly. Go check her out on YouTube and everything else.
You have a title for your book yet?
What?
Or you're not revealing it yet?
Do we have what? I'm sorry.
Oh, is it gonna be called The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit?
Oh no, we're working on the title. We're still working on the title. We have a lot of different ideas for it. And we're kind of we think we want to put Psycosmos in the title because we define what Psycosmos is in the introduction, but we're still kind of figuring out what exactly we want to name the book because we're looking at a bunch of different things. Like, really, I think probably synthesis is going to be in the title because that's exactly what the book is. The book does not it does not sit and try to go into extreme meticulous detail. It's more like this person says this, Kelly says this. Like we've even mentioned you in the book. So it's like, Manly P. Hall says this person says this. So what we're doing is we're combining the works of a whole bunch of people to paint a better picture and formulate a massive puzzle of people who really are speaking from the bottom of the heart and the truth, and that includes you. So you've been mentioned in the book a couple of times already.
Well, as soon as you're ready, like we can just jump back on here and talk about your book.
Yeah, 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 for
I'm
sure. We
really
will
excited
absolutely.
for it as well. So you could stop plugging me for a minute and just, yeah, anyone who's interested, watch out for the Psychosmos book that's coming, a compilation of pretty much everything by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's deep. We will have a much deeper conversation on it as we formulate it, probably like towards the end of this year. And of course, and naturally, anytime you want to kind of reach out to us and do more of these, we are more than open to the opportunity to talk with you because, as always, you enlighten us and you bring a lot of light into our life. So thank you, Kelly, once again. Make sure you guys go check her out. Make sure you like and subscribe, all the normal things that you guys do. We love every single one of you. Much love, and go check out Kelly's new book as well.